is just fantastic.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Hope you're having a marvellous day today. Before we start, got rid of the obligatory at the start of the year, smash the like, leave a comment. Do that now, thank you. It'll help with driving up engagement, which may well help the channel. We're not doing so well with the past couple of videos, and one was a hotter topic. Today's no better. It's not really a hot topic per se, but it is something that intrigued me. It intrigued me because it involves one of those apparently right-leaning commentary types, but I'm not entirely convinced considering how many times I've seen this person flip-flop on core issues, over the years anyway, in the form of Candace Owens, who's been getting into some legal trouble. Some are speculating this could well lead to a Mr. Jones-style repercussion for her. First name Alex. You know exactly who I'm talking about? Cool. For this video, we're going to go to a BBC article because it has all the information to drive some points home. I'm going to preface with the following. I'm not entirely convinced that Candace understands how the French electoral system works. Preferential is a thing we don't do here, and it's not what we do, you do even, in the United States Third World Banana Republic. They do it by preference, and they have rounds, repeated rounds. It's quite tragic because at the last election, had people grown a spine, they would have had a very different French president. And Emmanuel Macron's popularity has waned so much that it required multiple coalitions. The first prime minister chosen, Michel Barnier was it, barely lasted a month because it turns out people didn't want him. It's getting quite messy over there, and I fully expect at the next election for Emmanuel Macron to walk away, especially as the popularity of the now convicted Marine Le Pen is improving, getting better, bigger, all that. And it will happen because people are getting sick and tired of what is happening in respective countries within Europe as a continent, not the Union, where the people of Europe are secondary because of the European Union to those who are claiming asylum, many of whom are not, and are solely economic migrants. There is enough proof now to back that up, and by the way, the RAPE capital of Europe as a continent, not the Union, is now my country. I'm not okay with this, but we'll get to that another time. I know for a lot of you wonderful, you resplendent, you delicious people, politics is not your thing. It's not really mine either, to be honest. I want to cover topics that tickle me. This tickles me, but it is from somebody who is a political commentator. And I mentioned France on purpose because French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte, who many have been pointing out for years anyway because of the age gap between them, have filed a defamation lawsuit against Candace Owens because of repeated claims that France's First Lady was born male. Now, Candace has put out a statement in video form doubling down on her stance. And one of them is the argument that the French people would have voted differently if they'd known. Possibly. We won't know, we can't know for certain. If that were true, and Brigitte Macron is male, biologically that is. Say hypothetically Brigitte is, because we don't know for certain, and I'd rather not speculate on this grandmother here being male biologically. I don't see the big deal really, but perhaps that's just me. Because of the preferential voting system, and because people are mostly obsessed over Emmanuel Macron's socialist policies when he first came into office, I do still think he would have been voted in the first time, which meant subsequent terms would have happened regardless. Legal action, which was filed on Wednesday, the US state of Delaware, said that Owens has been spreading outlandish, defamatory and far-fetched fictions. Well, I do like alliteration. Owens has regularly repeated the claims on her popular podcast and social media channels, and in March 2024 stated that she would stake her entire professional reputation on her belief that Mrs. Macron is in fact a man. Don't do a Carl Jobst. It will backfire on you and your reputation could well be ruined. The onus of proof in this instance isn't on the Macrons to prove that Brigitte is female. The onus will be on you to prove that Brigitte is male. And I'm intrigued about that, I won't deny. I'm also intrigued that Emmanuel Macron has actually gone down this path. I'm intrigued by that, because it's a very American thing to do. I didn't realise it was also a very French thing to do, or French president thing to do. It's always considered a bit unpolitical, unpoliticianally, yeah. for them to lower themselves to the plebeians and the oiks and the flip-flop political grifters. People might be in my chat fans of Candace Owens, that's quite alright. You cannot deny she has flipped on a few issues over the years, and that's one of the many reasons why this one really intrigues me, because since apparently March 2024 she has held firm in this belief, as if it is some kind of massive gotcha. To me it's a bit redundant, to be honest, but I do think that comes from a mentality of not caring about the person in office's preferences, partners, because they're not a part of the political thing, right? The only thing that always intrigued me about Brigitte Macron with Emmanuel Macron is the 30-year age gap. That intrigued me. It did not change my perspective on Emmanuel Macron, other than indicating he perhaps had some mother issues. But again, it's not my place to judge, is it? Merely speculation. And there weren't many people when he became president criticising that age gap, which is interesting because if it's the other way round, boy oh boy do we hear everything. Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing really at this point. But the point still stands regardless. It doesn't really matter. Much like whether or not Brigitte Macron, the First Lady, is male-born. I really don't care. She's like 72 years old. Who cares at this point? But as Candace has made it a lifelong reputational mission, this is going to get very interesting for Candace Owens. So of course, we dive into that. In an episode of a podcast that was released on Wednesday, Candace Owens stood by her allegations and said of the lawsuit, "This is just goofy." Now I have a clip of that. I'm going to play a bit here.
You were born a man and you will die a man. That's the point I'm making. So give us a sample. I'll send my doctors to take your blood. Figure it out real quick, however you want to go about this. Hey, how about just giving us some pictures again of you growing up, raising your children? That would be fine. For whatever reason, to phone, by the way, like I said, we'll get to the bottom of it. Right, that is what Discovery is for. I'm going to ask a lot of questions.
Owens taunted the French First Lady and described being sued by her as an obvious, desperate public relations strategy. The thing is, there is a play here politically that could benefit the Macrons. If they win, or it gets to a stage where they can win, hypothetically, it would benefit their stock. Politically, it would benefit them. And it would harm any action against them, like Marine Le Pen, of course, issues of her own to deal with right now. But it would harm the movements against the Macrons, without the socialism, the far-left politics, and those who are centre-left or slightly more to the left, who formed a coalition with Macron so he could form a government because he needed a coalition. Because if you couldn't tell, there is a very interesting way of handling politics in France, much like in Germany. It's very interesting where people are willing to align and where they're not, because they refuse to allow very, very conservative politics to come to the front, I would surmise because of some historical guilt. In France's case, because they're scared. I don't know. It's only going to lead to more riots, and I know I'm right. I think most people do too. I try not to speak too much on politics for other countries because I know I'm ignorant, and that's quite alright, but I'm happy to learn from people when they're willing to be engaging in a more constructive manner, as opposed to just going, "Hey, you're wrong, Reed." Thank you. Continuing with the article. A conspiracy theory that has circulated for years in fringe online spaces alleges Mrs. Macron, Brigitte, was born male under the name of Jean-Michel, troglodyte, which belongs to her brother. Owens has spread the conspiracy theory to her audience, including nearly 7 million followers on Twitter. Earlier this year, releasing a video series called Becoming Brigitte. The Macrons said in a statement released by their attorneys, they had asked Owens repeatedly for a retraction but ultimately concluded that referring the matter to a court of law was the only remaining avenue for remedy. Quote, Miss Owens' campaign of defamation was plainly designed to harass and cause pain to us and our families, and to garner attention and notoriety. We gave her every opportunity to back away from these claims, but she refused. I feel like memeing somebody in this way could work, but if you seriously present it as if it's fact, it does fall into the territory of defamation, and as a creator you've got to be a bit careful here. It's been filed in Delaware. The Macrons are powerful enough that they can do this across the ocean and likely receive a settlement. The lawsuit alleges that Owens' disregarded all credible evidence disproving her claim in favour of platforming known conspiracy theorists and proven defamers. It also accuses Owens of falsely alleging the French president and his wife are blood relatives, and that Emmanuel Macron was installed in office by a secret CIA plot. Owens worked for conservative organisations including the student group Turning Point, media outlet Daily Wire, before launching an independent podcast in 2024. She has further spread rumours or suggested that conspiracies lie behind things such as COVID vaccines, the Holocaust and the moon landings. Weirdly, a number of the conspiracies around the vaccines have been proven true. No longer conspiracies, the vast majority in fact. I don't like people who speak down about what happened with the Holocaust, and the moon landings are a fascinating thing, aren't they? Yes. And very divisive. Like, how do they manage to take off when floating on the back of a space turtle? On a flat Earth, no less. Now, under US law, the Macrons have to prove malice, meaning the defendant knew the information was false but published it or broadcast it anyway. In France, a French court found 2 women guilty of libel for spreading false claims about Brigitte Macron. However, that decision was overturned on appeal, according to the local media. When you are as powerful as the Macrons are and able to quash all dissent against you in your own backyard, even if you have a minority government in effect, it's a brave move across the seas to think that you are just as untouchable. Although on appeal would indicate they are somewhat impotent in their libel claim stuff, right? Yeah. With Candace, it's hard to tell what is true and not with her these days, because she has switched sides on a number of arguments over the years. I don't watch her podcast, I am not interested in her podcast, I don't find her content to be useful or to be conducive to conversation. I'm not surprised she's leaning into the conspiracy stuff because that does get more views. One must know when to pick the battles. Candace knows. You don't have to know when to pick the battles, you just have to know which one is going to generate the most attention. And this defamation lawsuit, if she somehow manages to win or have it thrown out, it benefits her massively. It does make her untouchable to an extent. If the Macrons win, it tears her reputation to shreds and could potentially bankrupt her. She could suffer the Carl Jobs defect. My view is, I don't see how this is much of a point from Candace to call the French president's wife, who is old enough to be his mother, yes, I'll agree, which is another theory I know, but to call his wife a man. I know there is a very anti-trans sentiment within a number of conspiracy theorist peoples. I've learned that that's probably not the best position to hold, but I don't think, personally, that Brigitte is male. I really don't. And I couldn't care less even if Brigitte was. But as with everything we cover here, I'd love to know what you think. I want to use this video as an opportunity to lay foundations for future videos on this if you guys want me to cover it. Because I'm happy to cover these kind of subjects, I really am. But the past couple videos have done really badly. And I don't know if it's because of the topics, even though they're quite interesting topics to me. Iron Mouse, Dustin Daly being doxxed, Iron Mouse obviously being scammed, and the charity Immunodeficient Foundation, yes, being scammed out of $500,000. Which, by the way, for those who are listening, or 2 of you, they've raised over $1 million now for that charity, which is the best news I've heard all day, honestly. So do tell me in the comments down below if this is a subject you'd like to see more of. And of course, if the views reflect that, like, even if it's just like the baseline of what I normally average as opposed to the past 3, could be school holidays. That might be it. Do let me know in the comments. On Moistski Live later today, I'm going to be doing the very first ever live stream on an individual called King Cobra. Now, I've been asked to cover him many times over the years, and I know nothing of this guy. So we're going into this knowing nothing. I'm going to find a video or something, or someone's going to link me something, and I'm going to watch that and try vaguely to understand who this person is. If that would interest you, I'll link Moistski Live in the pinned comment down below with the sources for today's video. If I don't see you on Twitch or Kick before that as well, hope you have a great day, guys, and thank you so much for listening.